Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We are live here with Andy Schectman, the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals Investments. This is our first time ever, my first time ever, as Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance, to use the live streaming feature. I'm delighted to do it. It was actually some of our viewers who requested that we go live streaming, and specifically with Andy, and that they want to be able to ask
Liberty and
questions.
Finance. We are live here with.
So I'm going to make sure that I can do this without hearing an echo on my other screen. And Andy, thanks for joining us here live on Liberty and Finance.
Good to be here, Dunnigan. I need to figure out how to quiet one of my screens down because it's picking up a little bit of reverb here. So
I'm having the
try
same
to
problem.
Figure that out. I think I got that.
Hey, Sarge. We've got Sarge. We've got Vut Iwa. We've got Sticks of TNT, Neil Hahn, SG fans, Timothy Dawson. You guys are already rocking and rolling over on the live chat. We already had a question put in there by SG fans. He says, Andy, how are sales for physical silver lately?
Look, sales in general are still very brisk in relation to where they've been the last several years. Although this is the time of the year where things typically slow down. And I think when you put into context what we've all lived through over the last year and a half, even more so do people want to get out and kind of bust out, get away from the computer screen. So we've seen the typical slowdown in the summer months. And I think you can see that in what's happening to the premiums. And so right now, the premiums are the most advantageous I've seen them in 18 months. But in general, sales are still very, very brisk. It's just not the craziness that we saw in 2021, January, February, and most of 2020. So the summer months in general are typically a little bit slower. And I think if you think about it, people really wanting to bust out of the routine that we had, or lack of a routine, over the last 18 months, and get out and enjoy the outdoors and take vacations and see loved ones. It's manifested in a slowdown in sales and a lowering of premiums to the point where I find it to be, honestly, the best value I've seen in a year and a half.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that kind of got us started on this discussion today, Andy, was the question that's been raised by people. It was in a question that was submitted to a Rick Rule interview that I did earlier today, which was, will silver premiums stay down? People have noticed that they've come down from the unprecedented highs that they were at a couple of times during the past year. Just in the past week, month, they've dropped down to levels that we haven't seen in some time. So what's your thoughts? Because you've talked to us in the past about some of those major dynamics that are driving the supply-demand imbalance, and how that might result in sustained upward trend in general in premiums. But even when you have an established trend, there can be volatility. So do you see this current knockdown in premiums recently to be just a passing thing, or do you think that we may be in this for a period of time?
We saw a little bit of this in 2020. There was a brief period of time where premiums came down. Look, we're one event away, whatever that event is, one moment away, where I would characterize this last year and a half as an awakening and an expansion of interest away from just the core of metals people into people who are just generally uneasy about what's happening. And I think if we see more lockdowns, if we see more problems with this new Delta variant, where people are getting scared, where the government continues to crank up the printing press. They've already said just the other day that they're going to continue with their $150 billion a month asset purchases, and they're not going to lower interest rates, or raise interest rates anytime soon. The environment for this to be a gold-friendly market is as good as I've ever seen it. So I guess if I had to guess, I would say premiums probably come back up, simply because we're kind of in the eye of the storm right here, where it's quiet. I guess if people believe that the next 6 months or the next year, the next 18 months will be uneventful, then yeah, premiums will come down and they'll stay down. if we are entering back into a period of time where we expect to see greater volatility in the ether, not just talking about precious metals. I'm talking about socially. I'm talking about big picture economically. Then no, I don't expect premiums to stay down. But in truthfulness, getting product right now is easier than it's been. Although it's interesting because it hasn't shown itself in secondary market product. No one's selling back anything. It's just that the mints have finally caught up. As the demand has waned here in the summer months, the mints have caught up. And so product is available, premiums have come down. It's a sweet spot. So I guess it all depends on what people see in their mind's eye. While I have no idea what to say about where they ultimately go, I'll simply say, if I had to guess, I see greater volatility in the ether, if you will, in the months ahead. And with that being said comes, I think, a greater push into precious metals. Let me put it to you this way. I'd like people to think about it for a minute. If you won the lottery, where would you put your money right now? Stocks at all-time highs, bonds at all-time highs, real estate at all-time highs, all factored against the lowest interest rates really in human history. Where do you put your money other than precious metals right now? Some may say cryptocurrencies. Okay, fine. But other than these types of alternatives, where does your money go? And I think we've kind of hit that lull, if you will, where there's a certain amount of confidence that maybe things are getting better. And so people have backed off. But all it takes is a little bit more anxiety or a little bit more government meddling or imposition. You see in New York City that you have to prove that you've been vaccinated to get into a restaurant. What is this going to do to the small businesses that are just barely hanging on? My point to you is that we're not far removed from the chaos that has been the last 18 months. Yes, it may be summer and we may have had a reprieve. Living here in Florida, I understand that. It's certainly a reprieve. But if we go back into anywhere near what it was like over the last 18 months for whatever reason, yeah, premiums will shoot right back up as demand increases. There's just not a lot of supply when you factor it against the amount of assets and investments out there. And if people just shift a little bit of their assets from traditional assets into somewhere safe. It used to be bonds were somewhere safe, but the bond market being the mother of all bubbles right now with interest rates on the 10-year treasury at 1.2%. I don't know where people would put their money with any degree of safety and comfort. So I really, I try to say this and not sound like someone who's talking his book or someone who just wants to get people to part with their money. I say it with complete sincerity and honesty. Where do you put your money? I often think about that, and I continue to buy every 2 weeks because I cannot think of a place to put my money that would make me feel comfortable right now other than gold and silver. And in that vein, if more and more people start to make that realization, premiums go right back to the craziness that they've been for the last 18 months.
That's kind of echoes what I heard from Rick Rule. He mentioned again the same statistic he's mentioned in the past about less than 0.5% now of people's investments are in precious metals related or natural resource related equities, and that's where he said, anything even that takes a step in that direction will be like something we haven't seen anything yet in terms of that demand supply imbalance. Sarge 27271 asks, Andy, what are your thoughts about an October surprise, evictions, unemployment benefits ending? We've had that. Actually, it was Michael Pinto who talked about the end of a stimulus cliff.
I have a hard time believing that they'll actually let it happen. And it just seems like they'll continue to find a way to push that down the road. I just saw the other day, I think it was in Arkansas, the governor, the governor had said that they're going to continue with the $600 a week stimulus. I think that that's probably pretty likely, to be honest with you. I think that in October, typically we start to see more interest in precious metals. Usually comes around Labor Day. in terms of surprises, yeah, I mean, the debt ceiling, it's a joke. And the moratorium on evictions, I think they'll kick that down the road. And I think that the likelihood of some sort of an event grows every day, whether it be with evictions, whether it be with more stimulus, more money printing. It never ends. And I guess these days, it just seems it's one thing after another. And the optimist in me wants to say, yeah, maybe we're out of the woods, but I don't know. Then again, I just have this uneasy feeling, this uneasy, and maybe it has to do with all of the divisiveness I see, and it just seems that you can't sit at a table with someone, blue versus red, rich versus poor, black versus white, vaccine versus non-vaccine. There's so many points of contention that are just tearing away at the fiber. I think it doesn't take much to light a fuse anymore. And I think so, to expect there to be an event, I would be surprised if there wasn't an event. And whatever that event is, I guess, remains to be seen. But it just seems like we've been conditioned into seeing events that happen with greater frequency and greater severity, and we're just becoming numb to so many of them. What is the event? I don't know. But I think to expect it to go back to the way it was 2019 and before, as much as we would all wish that, I have a hard time believing that we're anywhere near that.
Yeah, we've seen increasing frequency announcements coming out either from the presidential press secretary or other branches of Congress and so on, saying that new lockdowns, perhaps even more severe than what we've seen in the past, are about to happen. In other countries, that's already happening. We had John Adams from Australia on just last weekend. He was talking about military being called out to enforce the lockdowns in New South Wales, and others who have been reporting from either from Canada or elsewhere in the UK and France, talking about new levels of lockdowns being brought out. So it's definitely, we seem to be back on track to, we've interviewed several constitutional attorneys, one of which was John Whitehead from the Rutherford Institute. He talks about how it's this ratcheting effect. There'll be government will go ahead and take over, taking away some liberties and freedoms, and then they'll have some partial easing, and then they just ratchet it up again. But it never goes back all the way. The Patriot Act never got unwound. We never left, code level orange or whatever it was on the threat level. It just keeps ratcheting up, and it seems like we're about now seeing that next big move forward. And it's
I remember in the middle of this in February, people were saying, well, this is just a test run, there'll be more of them. And I thought, no. But it's, I mean, I don't know. Is this the new normal? Is this what we're going to have to do to get along? And what does that say for the economy? And is that just a green light for the Fed to continue printing? The other day at the FOMC meeting, they came out and they said, well, they're not going to lower interest rates for the foreseeable future. Or raise interest rates rather for the foreseeable future until they get closer to full employment. This is more just disingenuous speak from the Fed, because in 2019 we had the lowest level of unemployment in 50 years, and they lowered interest rates 3 times. In 2008, at the peak of the financial crisis, with a Fed balance sheet of $800 billion, and again, the fact that they were going to spend $90 billion a month on treasury purchases and on mortgage-backed securities made most economists say, what? Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And now we have a balance sheet, supposedly, when the economy is on the mend, that is 10 times the size at over 8 trillion, and they're spending $150 billion a month. So, the old adage that Richard Russell was talking about 15, 20 years ago, inflate or die, it's pretty much what they have to do. And I think what they did was put a floor under the price of gold, because they're telling you there will be no austerity. They will not raise interest rates. They will continue to support the bond market, as we've talked before, with interest rates at just over 1% on the 10-year treasury. They're the only ones foolish enough to be buying the the back end of the bond market when you see inflation running 4 to 5 times, according to the CPI, 13 times greater, according to John Williams' shadow stats. It's a losing game. So when you see them going to such great lengths and the jawboning, something just tells me that we're not anywhere near out of the woods. And I hate to say that, I struggle with saying things like that publicly because there are a lot of people who think I'm full of crap when I say that because I want to sell gold and silver. Look, I'd like someone in this chat to poke a hole in what I'm saying. Where do you put your money if you have it?
Well, yeah, I'm getting calls on a daily basis from people who either selling a home, or if they had a rental property, selling that, or one guy was selling a cell phone tower that he owned, and so on. And they're asking that exact question. They're posing that question. It's like, where the heck do you put this money? And one thing that they say that you didn't mention wasn't just about yield. They also are concerned about confidence and access, because they say, I don't even want to keep the cash in the bank. Even though there's no yield, there's also no confidence on their part that they're going to have access to that.
Well, why should there be? I mean, there shouldn't be. And I mean, history has proven, look at Greece and Cyprus. When the trouble starts, the access to your funds is impossible. You and I talked on one of the recent shows where you spoke of being in a money market in 08, and that money market had involvement with investments with Lehman, and you were locked out. Well, subsequently, they put gating into money markets. So when people move to cash in their 401k, thinking that they're safe, you're not, because you can't move when the buck breaks, as they would be very concerned about if we continue to see negative interest rates. And these companies who are providing the services, where do they invest their money? In equities at all-time highs or in negative yielding treasuries? Where do they put their money to even return the paltry return that you get on the money market accounts? See, this is bigger than people, I think, are thinking about. Take it a step further. Where do you put your money with any safety? And let alone value and return, I'm just talking safety from the impending train that's barreling down the tracks at us.
We've got other questions here about jurisdictional risk and whether people are going to relocate or not. Some people are saying, that basically this seems to be a global phenomenon now. In many cases, like you relocated within the U.S. Could you just touch base with us on that? Do you believe it makes any difference? The fact that you left, in this case, Minnesota, and selected another location, in this case, Florida, do you perceive already any confirmation, one way or the other, that that's going to make a difference for you in terms of how your freedoms, your whatever safety is going to play out as this thing goes forward? I know none of us can predict the future. That's an unknown. But do you see any confirmation yet that either makes that, that you did the right thing, or does or doesn't matter?
I mean, on a micro level, yeah, I feel much more free on a micro level, in that people are behaving as though they're free here. Although, I guess that is transitory, to use Fed speak. That can change right away. But I also feel safer. I left Minnesota because I watched the 3rd precinct burn down on national TV and a defunding of the police. I have a very good friend whose son goes to the University of Minnesota. They severed their ties with the Minneapolis police, and there are homicides going on at the University of Minnesota. This is a place I went to school where, I walked the streets at 3:30 in the morning without a second thought. And I'm being told by this young man that it's a frightening place to be. These are things that I never would have thought of. I lived in downtown Minneapolis out of college, and, go home from the bars in the middle of the night by myself. Don't even think about it. Now I wouldn't walk those streets with a gun in my pocket by myself. And I say that to you as someone who was very proud to be from Minnesota, and am very sad by what I have seen. Now, granted, it's not chaos there, at least yet, but in 2020, I was really not comfortable being there any longer. As someone who's out there, I put my neck out there a lot, and I felt unsafe. I feel safe here. Gated community aside, it's just a different vibe down here. Whether you talk about freedom or safety, it's all on a micro level because I see the bigger picture. and even Ron DeSantis, and you know, and his policies, which are somewhat maverick, you know, in the United States, which make me feel comfortable, I think could very quickly be, you know, changed if enough pressure was put on him and on the situation. Today, they're saying there are more people in hospital beds here in Florida than at any time. The rhetoric is increasing, and with that comes the more erosion of our freedoms. And I think we're getting to a point where, you know, Doug Casey talks about a civil war. I've always thought that sounds absurd, but is it? Is it absurd when there's so much anger going on between different belief structures? And so relocating, yeah, I would simply say try to go to a place where there's like-minded people, where they don't vilify the police. And I just didn't see any of that in Minnesota. And I left with a heavy heart, my friends and my family, and a place I've been for 50 years. I would have told you in 2019, there's not a snowball's chance in Haiti that I would have left Minnesota. I would have been there forever. And I know in my heart it was the right thing to do for the reasons that you mentioned. But still, I don't think even being here or in Texas or in Wyoming or in anywhere that we are ultimately safe from the macro problems that face this country.
We've got a question here about the Fed's role that they've played so far, or what you think they're willing to do next. Adam Krosnick asks, curious what Andy thinks about the Fed stepping into the repo markets. I guess we have to wind the tape back to September 2019 and bring it forward now, and they're doing the reverse repos as well. So it's like, it seems like the amounts keep going up, and the breadth of it in between there was also junk bond purchases. Just could you touch briefly on what you think of the Fed's involvement in those markets?
Well, first of all, I find it kind of a peculiar time to roll out a permanent repo market facility, in the respect that they're not even being used at all right now. While they were being heavily used in 2019, what we're seeing now is the opposite of that, the reverse repo market. And the reverse repo market, my take on it, in conjunction with like the Wells Fargo closing their lines of credit, to me, center around big money not trusting the economy to lend the money out into, that they would rather give the Fed their money earning 5 basis points than lend it out into the economy earning 5%, 100 times the return. It says an awful lot. I think the Fed issued these repo markets, put them in place almost to save face, in the respect that when they have to appear as though they're fighting inflation, when they have to actually appear as though they may try to normalize their balance sheet, I think that there will be a panic, and very quickly they may need to inject cash back into the system, because just the rhetoric alone has enough to shock the markets into a place where the Fed needs to step in. I think it's jawboning, it's lip service. I don't see anything substantive about it, other than to think that they're going to continue with this inflationary path until it becomes so evident that they have to at least talk about or appear as though they're going to try and do something about it. But there's an old saying that, you know, once you actually see the inflation starting to show itself, you're too late to do anything about it. It's going to happen. And I think we're already there. Maybe the Fed thinks we're not. They must, in order to continue to say that they're going to buy 150 billion a month and not raise rates. To me, it's just it's lipstick on a pig, I guess. It doesn't do anything other than act as though, or look as though, make an appearance as though that they're going to do something about a problem when that problem happens. Because right now, no one's even using the repo market. They're all filling up the reverse repo market instead.
Andy, I know we like to keep our weekly market updates tight and concise, and also give you a chance to talk about a weekly special. Last week, we got considerable interest in the $3.95 over spot that you offered on the 1-ounce silver 2121 Britannias. And I wonder if you had anything particular in mind for us this week.
Yeah, as a favor to Chris Marcus and Arcadia Economics, I really sharpened my pencil this week on two specials. A resumption of the 2021 Britannias, but I lowered the price on those to $3.75 over. And also the 2021 Australian Kangaroos at $3.95 over. And these are all brand new coins in mint sealed tubes and mint boxes. And it's as good of a price as literally as I've seen on these two items since December of 2020, or excuse me, January of 2020. If you're looking to buy sovereign issued coins, this is as good as it's going to get, unless we see the premiums continue to fall. And if they do, we'll adjust them. But until then, no, this is as good as anything I've offered the public in the better part of almost 2 years.
So guys, I just put that in the chat stream in case you didn't catch those. If I got that correct, Andy, I've got 2021 silver Britannias at $3.75 over spot and 2021 silver Kangaroos at $3.95 over spot.
That is correct. That is correct.
That's awesome. We had quite a few people who have been waiting on the sidelines somewhat for the last several weeks, waiting for a dip in spot prices. Well, they got that. And then now we also see a dip in premiums. So that's a twofer, and hope people take advantage of that. Guys, if you do want to call 888-81-LIBERTY, I see that Elijah just put that on the screen there, 888-815-4237. Either I or one of my sons will take care of you as quickly as we can. And that can be tonight, it can be tomorrow. We got us in different time zones, so we're working.
I'd like to do something too. I'd like to give away a couple of coins. Let's just say I'll give away a real nice coin, but let's see who can answer this question first. A pop quiz. What do you think is the largest, in terms of line items, the largest asset in the U.S. financial accounts? The largest asset on the balance sheet of the U.S. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see the answer yet, but when you see what they consider their largest asset, the U.S., it's startling, and I think people should understand that the road that we are heading down, when factored against the assets of the United States, it's no, not bonds, not gold. It's absolutely frightening. It's horribly. No, it's not real estate either.
Which the U.S. Claiming that their largest asset,
yes,
financial
on
asset,
their balance sheet.
Is it? Will we recognize it as a financial asset?
There it is, right there. Stephanie Deloney. She buzzed by there real quick. Stephanie has it right. It's student loans. Student debt right now is the largest line item at $1.41 trillion. So when we talk about a country that is indebted at the rate of about $140 trillion based upon funded and unfunded liabilities, they are telling us that the debt of our children is their largest single asset. It is a liability to the kids. It is an asset to the United States government. I mean, when you see stuff like that, how do you remain hopeful? I don't. I find it to be disgusting. Number two on it was land, and number three was military. Or actually, maybe number two was military, number three was land. Those are the top three. And when you talk about military, you're talking airplanes, military bases, bullets, everything in between. But when we talk about the world reserve currency, and the largest asset we own, and a country that continues to go deeper and deeper and deeper into debt, and the largest asset we have is student debt, that should put a little frame of reference around all of the things that are happening right now. And how much wiggle room do we really have when, after all, the standard of living that we've had for so long has been, in many respects, fostered by the good graces of our foreign creditors? At what point do they say, why do we accept the dollar as world reserve when they are obliterating the value of it without a care in the world, and in terms of assets have virtually nothing? The biggest asset being, according to our own government, being $1.4 trillion student debt burden.
That's shocking. We had a good comment. Well, there's been a ton of good comments from the people in the chat window. One person I thought was particularly perceptive among many perceptive comments was, our best asset is our people. That's absolutely the case. We have to be very, very careful. That was James Peter Millward who says it's people. Be careful how we take that, how the government might take it, because we're not just a financial asset to be milked.
Well, how about and if Stephanie wants to send you an email, or me at Andy at Miles Franklin, I will send her a coin. How about the fact that the Social Security trust fund is $59 trillion in the hole? I mean, the whole thing is falling apart. And when you see a government that is continuing to go down the same road and paper over the problems, buying gold and silver has never been more important. It's not about getting wealthy. It's about there are no other alternatives where you can safely put your money, not even in the bank with bail-ins and inflation. Literally, if John Williams is right and you're getting paid a fraction of a percent, and money creation and inflation are running at close to 14% right now, what does that do for the savings in the bank or anything fixed income? You know, the reason they're doing that is because the decrease in the value of the dollar is also correspondent to decrease in the value of the debt. It's the only way that they can pay off this or at least appear as though they're paying off this ever increasing debt. And so I don't think things normalize. And ultimately, when that realization, I think, hits Main Street, I think you see a tsunami of demand in an industry, as Rick says, 0.5% or less in complete assets across the whole matrix. What if it goes to 8% like it did in 1980? We've talked about that before. This is an industry that overnight blows up, that can't handle it. So these are the environment. This is the environment that we find ourselves in. And when I tell you that the premiums haven't been this good in 18 months, I truly do mean that. And if you told me that ended tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised, because every single time we've seen product get hard to come by, it happens like that. And there's never any advance warning. And so good time to be doing it. Also a good time to be considering trading gold for silver at a 71-to-1 ratio. It's as good of a value as it's been in quite some time in terms of trading gold to silver, especially if you have it inside of an IRA, where you can do that without any taxable implications. So there are still opportunities to be found out there to protect yourself and even to get ahead. They're just dwindling, I guess, other than precious metals. I don't see any that I feel comfortable with.
Well, Andy, we're going to have to leave it there, but we're just delighted to have your presence here. And I just got to thank my son, Elijah, because he was my technical main guy to help get this all set up for a live stream. I've never done a live stream in my life before, so it was a big step for me. I'm not sure I could do it again without his help, but I sure appreciated his help getting this rolling this time. Thank you, everybody. We've had over 300 and more than 300 people in the live chat. Thanks you all for being here every evening with us at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and for participating in either our super chats during our premieres of recorded videos, or especially these live streams. It's awesome to have everybody here. Andy, just wanted to thank you, as always, for joining us on behalf of all of our viewers, on joining us here again on Liberty and Finance. And remember, people, after we end this stream, the entire recording will be then post-processed and be produced by YouTube as a...
I'll tell you what I'll do also, Dunnigan. I'll stick around here. I set aside a little bit of time. I know you're traveling and have a lot going on, so I will stick around here and try to answer some questions here on the live chat for another 20, 30 minutes. And so if people want to fire off some questions, I'll try to answer them best I can here, try to type them off as fast as I can. But as always, my admiration, respect, and appreciation to you and Elijah are endless. And I just always appreciate being here with you and associated with you and your family. So I wish you safe travels and a great evening, and I'll stick around and answer some questions here as we say goodbye.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks, everyone.
All the best.